This is going to be a brief presentation on the grading rubrics that are used on your papers. These are slightly longer and more elaborate than the ones that we use for the discussion posts. So it's important for you to understand what categories we're using to grade the papers, what the standards so that you can improve your writing. The first step is after you get a paper returned to you, you're going to go to the grade book to find it. And when you find the particular assignment you're interested in, you can click on the View Rubric. And here you're going to find a set of different categories. The categories, the description of the category, and then the weights and standards that are applied for each category. So for example, this is the very beginning of it. We have 4 out of 12 different categories shown. The first one is the clarity of the introduction. Now every paper that you write longer than one page needs to have an introduction. It may be labeled as an introduction, it may not be labeled as an introduction, but the reader wants to know what this paper is going to be about. As you can see, when I evaluated the sample paper, I saw that the introduction wasn't complete. It didn't really tell the reader what the paper was going to be about, and consequently it was rated in the good category with a score of 4.25%. Now there's a range within each one of these categories that I could apply. I could apply anything from 4 up to 5, okay? And so in this particular one, they've got less than the full amount of points that they could get for a introduction. What should you have in your introduction? You should state the topic that you're going to be dealing with. Everything should be based upon some research, so you should say what the research background is, and then in addition what your paper is going to do. What are you going to tell us about? How is it going to be laid out? So that I, going in as a reader, looking at, for example, a 20-page paper, I should be able to know within the first couple of paragraphs what the paper is about, why it was written, what it proposes to do. And that's important. The next category is the application of theory. All your papers that you'll be writing for your DBA classes will be based upon some theory or perhaps multiple theories. And so it's important that your paper demonstrate that you understand the theory and that you're accurately applying it in your paper. So in this particular case, I thought the paper did a pretty good job. It got the excellent category, received 9.5%, and it gave me the feedback of shows accurate understanding of the theory. That's what you're trying to demonstrate, is you really understand the theory that you're talking about. So you're not just making up ideas. You're going to base your ideas upon established research, and you're going to find that research in the online library, or you may be using your textbook for some of your ideas. But at this stage, you're not going out and doing experiments and running surveys and things that would provide original data. You're using other people's ideas and what they've come up with, and then basing your ideas upon that. You're advancing the thinking in that particular area. So you're going to have a good understanding of the theories that you're using in your work. The third category is relevance, and that means, are you talking about what the paper is supposed to be talking about? In your introduction, you established what the topic was and how you were going to approach it. Well, are you following through in the paper? Are you staying on the topic? Don't wander around. Don't digress from the topic focus. You should be able to ask yourself for each particular paragraph or sentence that you write, what is this contributing to the topic? What does it add to the paper? Does it need to be there, or am I just making up additional content? The fourth category is the references that you'll be using. Each of your papers requires a number of journal articles and references to those. The longer the paper, the more references you should have. It's kind of as simple as that. If you're writing a 1 or 2 page paper, probably 1 or 2 references is enough. If you're writing a 20-page paper, you should have half a dozen to a dozen references, showing that you have covered the bases with regards to the research related to that particular topic. What's considered a good reference, it should be coming from what we call a refereed academic journal, something that has been reviewed by other academics and is purported to be valid and important contribution to the field. Wikipedia, USA Today, Huffington Post, now those all provide news and information, and I'm not saying you can't use those at all, because they do provide some information. However, you can't base all your opinions and conclusions upon a news story that may turn out to be totally irrelevant in a couple of days. Okay? So you've got to use the academic journal articles that you find in the Kaiser Online Library. On with the next set of categories. The next is the reference list. Well, of course, this refers to the area I was just speaking about, which is you've got your journal articles and you've got your books that you're referencing. Now you have to build what we used to call a bibliography at the end, showing the books that you actually used, the articles that you referred to, who the authors were when they were published in what journals, and so on. And there are specific guidelines in your APA publications that specify how that's to be done. The next category is in-text citations and paraphrasing. You'll be taking information out of these articles and out of these books and then putting it in your paper. There's a correct and many incorrect ways to do this. You need to do it in the correct manner. Next category, and the next two are kind of related, is critical and creative thinking. Here the idea is you're not just pulling things out of articles that other people have said and posting them in your paper. You're actually analyzing that information and putting it together in a new way. So you need to demonstrate that you actually understand what the authors of the sources that you're using are saying, and that you're able to combine them and dissect them and compare them in various ways that show you have a good understanding, you've thought about it, and you're going to come up with some original ideas. Your analysis and your conclusions count a lot. That's what we're trying to do here, is not simply restate what other people have said, but come up with some ideas that you can claim as your own. The final category, or set of categories, have to do more with the mechanics of writing the paper. So the first one is the quality of the writing. There's a set of standards that the APA specifies with regards to the professionalism, so you need to make sure that your writing is in that category, and what we're aiming for is called scholarly writing, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail. Your paper should be well organized. It should be easy for the reader to follow, to know where they are, to know what topics you're covering. I would suggest breaking the paper up into separate subtopics and then putting in headings to identify what you're going to be discussing in that section of your paper. Simply writing 20 pages of continuous kind of stream of consciousness is not, to my mind, very well organized. You should be able to break it down into the separate subtopics that you're planning on dealing with, kind of like you would lay out an outline of the things that you're going to discuss in your paper. The next category deals with precision, and here again we're getting kind of the quality of the writing. Graduate level papers are not written in a casual first-person manner. You should always write in third person, avoid any kind of slang or non-professional references. Again, this is something that you're aiming towards sending in to a professional academic journal, and the reviewers would certainly toss it out if it did not appear to be written at a professional scholarly level. So get in the habit of reviewing your work and then throwing out anything that appears like it's far too casual. Finally, mechanics. Here we're talking about spelling, grammar, punctuation, things like that. Should be done correctly. Again, those are just expectations of anybody who's writing for scholarly publication, that they know how to spell the words and that they know how to punctuate. If you need to have somebody work as a proofreader on your work before you submit it. The programs themselves, you should be writing in Word. They have a spell checker and kind of a grammar checker. You could use those. If you find your language skills are not quite up to par, there are translator programs, so you can write in one language and have it translated to another language. If you're unsure of, I don't know, tense and verb subject agreement and things like that, that's an important thing to get right. They all stand out as huge errors when somebody's reading it. So spelling, grammar have to be done correctly. Finally, the total score ends up being put together, and this would, in this particular case, we're looking at an 89.5 based upon what the rubric says. Now, as long as the paper was turned in on time, there would be no penalties for late assignments, and that would be the score that would show up in the grade book. If there were late penalties involved, then that would be taken out of the 89.5 score. Penalties for late work. I've talked about these before. 10% up to 1 week, 20% 1 to 2 weeks, and so on and so forth. These percentages would be subtracted from the initial grade. The keys to success for writing papers. First of all, become familiar with the rubric as I've just laid out. Be sure you understand all the categories, their relative weights, and what the achievement levels are for each level. When I grade a paper and turn it back to you, it will have comments on it specific to good things and bad things, things that I liked and things that I didn't like in the paper. And these will be fairly consistent with what I write on the rubric, but they'll be more specific in a particular targeted area within the paper, like a particular sentence or a particular word choice or a particular concept that I think needs to be changed. So look at both of them. If you have questions after you receive a paper or before you start writing your next paper, be sure to get in touch with me and let me know that you need some more clarification. Get your papers in on time. The penalties are rather stiff. Check with the instructor or me if you think you need an exemption because of a particular extenuating circumstances. And try to improve with each paper. The reason I spend time grading and writing comments and working with the rubrics is to give you an idea about how to continually improve each paper so that the papers that you're turning in at the end of this class will be substantially better than the papers that you turned in the beginning of the class. So until next time, goodbye and good luck. Happy typing.